Good evening, folks. Jim Worthen. The show is Worthen One. We're here every Friday night at 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock live. We replay during the week. You can check your TV guide, the News Press TV guide, the box on your Cox cable, and look for Worthen One for our repeats. We're also streaming live over the internet, and it will be archived for people to watch. Somebody said for eternity, but I don't think it's that short. And so please follow us every Friday night with different exciting guests and me. Tonight, we're going to get into politics, and we're going to get down where the rubber meets the road in politics, our congressional race. The incumbent Lois Capps has been there a long time, and maybe later in it I'll get a little nasty about how she kept her word of only running for 3 terms, but I will wait to get nasty. Unfortunately, we have a candidate running against her who's a nice person, not like me. And his name is Tom Watson. How are you, Tom?
Great. Great. Thanks for having me.
Tom, in this show, we don't just deal with the issues, we deal with the people. And I always like to build to the issues by getting to know the person. Where were you born?
I was born in Monterey, actually, in California in 1960.
And what did your parents do?
Well, my dad was a naval officer. He was a Naval Academy graduate and was an aviator. And he was in Monterey going to the Naval Postgraduate School. And that's where I was born on Fort Ord, which no longer exists anymore. And,
but the Naval Postgraduate School still exists.
It does still exist. I went there myself. Yeah.
And there was a language school there for years also, very high quality.
Yeah, the Defense Language Institute, that's still there. That's where obviously people in the service go, but also people that work in embassies and that sort of thing. That's where they go to learn foreign language. Pretty amazing. They can teach people a language in 5-6 weeks.
I had a friend who was stationed in the Balkans, I think in Trieste maybe, and he could, it was before the computers picking out words, he could do it in 17 languages, and he'd gone to that school, but you know, he couldn't translate in all those languages, but he could catch phrases and say, oh, we got to go back and listen to this.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, how long were you in Monterey?
Oh, just for a couple years, and then we moved a lot. Obviously, being in the service, we moved constantly back in those days, back to the East Coast, West Coast. So we moved from there to Ridgecrest, China Lake, out in the middle of the Mojave Desert.
Biggest military establishment in the country.
It's it's a pretty interesting place, and I lived there. That's my very first memories of life were from there, actually. And then we would move back and forth. Lived in Jacksonville, Florida, a number of times, Virginia Beach, D.C. I lived in Italy for a year, which was kind of neat. Up in the Central Valley, up here in California, at Lemoore. Yeah, real garden spot. Yeah.
You were stationed a lot in California. You hit all the high points. Did you get down to San Diego ever?
Well, not until I joined the Navy myself, yeah.
But with your family, you were at China Lake, Lemoore,
Monterey, yeah.
So where you went to high school?
High school, I was fortunate to be able to stay in the D.C. area. Actually, my dad was at the Pentagon in Northern Virginia, so I went to high school there, a place called Oakton High School. Yeah.
And what made you think that you wanted to, you became a naval aviator?
Yeah, I was a flyer, flight officer, and well, living on base, it was kind of neat. A couple of times we did, and ride my little bike out to the end of the runway and watch the jets fly around. And it's like, hey, that looks like fun. I think I'd like to do that. So really from probably the time I was about 12, I really decided, hey, I want to go to the Naval Academy and I want to fly airplanes.
And you went to Annapolis?
I did. I'm actually a 3rd-generation Naval Academy graduate. My mom's dad he was class of 27. And he was actually killed in action in World War II. He was a skipper of a destroyer. And he was killed in a pretty big naval battle called the Battle of Iron Bottom Sound. And they were leading a 3-ship through the middle of the Japanese battle formation at night, trying to drop off a bunch of reinforcements for the Marines on Guadalcanal that were under siege. And they got caught. Actually, one of our own airplanes dropped a flare on them by mistake, and so they were illuminated in the middle of all these battleships. And they fought, and all 3 ships were sunk, and I don't believe there were any survivors. But he was awarded the Silver Star for that, and actually had a ship named after him.
Wow.
Yeah, the USS Lofberg, which was a destroyer that was in service from the 50s. I think they decommissioned around 1970 or so.
This is your maternal
Yeah.
grandfather.
Yeah, this was my mom's dad. And then my dad was class 54, and then he actually stayed a very long career and was pilot off the carriers, and he flew mainly attack jets. Yeah, he had over 200 combat missions in Vietnam, and he was a squadron commander and air wing commander. He was the CO of an aircraft carrier.
Wow.
Yeah, the USS Independence, and he retired as a rear admiral, so he had quite a good career.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the Independence is it in New York?
No, it's decommissioned, and it's actually up in Bremerton in mothballs. There's 4 carriers up there in mothballs, and that's one of them. Yeah.
But for some reason that name rings a bell. It wasn't the one that Dianne Feinstein refused to let come in to be a museum in San Francisco Harbor, was it?
I'm not sure. I think that was the Midway, and I believe that's how the Midway ended up down in San Diego,
okay.
which is actually a great museum. If you haven't been down there to see that, it's well worth the trip.
Yeah, it's carrier duty. I had a uncle who was in the Navy as a chief petty officer for almost 40 years, and his last carrier duty was on the Ticonderoga in Korea. And the stories he'd tell of counting the planes going out and then counting them coming back, is tough,
Much safer than it is back. My dad, he was telling me his first cruise was right after the Korean War, and they were flying ADs, SPAD, Skyraider, big giant propeller plane. The last one on the carriers, actually. And so they
had the fold-up wings?
Yeah, all the airplanes on the carrier do. I think he told me 15 airplanes, or maybe 12 airplanes and 15 pilots, and they came back with half, just from accidents. Yeah.
It's. I can remember as a kid, I grew up in the Bay Area, and I can remember the planes going out of Alameda, and for training for carrier duty, and then coming back and hitting the Santa Cruz Mountains, and and then the same thing happened down with the carrier duty off of San Diego. Pilots just did very dangerous training.
Yeah, flying off the ship at night it's no way to make a living. That's where I got all my gray hair, actually.
So you went to Annapolis.
I did.
And then you became a pilot. I think we might even have a picture of you as a pilot, but tell us a little about...
I was a flight officer, actually. So, I really wanted to fly. So, out of Annapolis, you get to pick, you want to be a submariner, drive ships, or fly planes, or go in the Marines. And so I was lucky enough to get a flight officer spot and went down to Pensacola, and I was down there for a little over a year, and
they're going to bring a picture up of you.
Okay.
You can tell. They can tell us. You can tell us what that, where that was taken, and about what year.
Okay. Oh, there we go. That's that was down at Miramar. That's in front of an F-14, which is what I was.
So you finally got to the San Diego station.
I did. Yeah, I was very lucky. Ended up at Miramar. It was great duty down there, and so I was at Miramar for about 8 years, and I think that was back about 1985 or 6 or so, back when I still had hair. As you can
that
see.
was after the movie Top Gun?
Actually, it's about the same time. My squadron, as it turns out, we did the flying, the aerial scenes in Top
Gun.
Yeah, just the way that the timing worked out. We had just gotten back from cruise, and you typically have a couple months where you stand down, people take vacations, and you do work on airplanes and that sort of thing. And our skipper volunteered us to do the movie. So the movie guys and Grumman at the time came in and wired up all our airplanes with the cameras and put little switches in the cockpit. And the director would come in and tell us, okay, I want, put the sun up here, I want to see that. And so we go out and film it. The cameras ran really fast. So you'd have maybe a minute worth of film. So it'd be get all set up, cameras on, cameras off, and do it again like 15 times till you ran out of film. And then he'd tell us, no, 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 you guys screwed it up. And then we'd go back and do it again.
So do you ever watch that movie and freeze it to see it? Now, is that
Well,
one of my planes? Is that?
You know, I actually was going through Top Gun at the time. So I only got a couple of the sorties where we were actually doing the filming, but they filmed the same thing over and over and over. So it's really hard to tell what was filmed and what wasn't. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. We took all the actors flying, and they all got sick. Most of them did. Actually, one guy, I don't think Tom Cruise got sick, and Anthony Edwards, Goose, he didn't get sick, but the rest of them did. Yeah.
Now, how fast did those planes go?
F-14, very fast airplane. It would go top speed at altitude was Mach 2.34 or so. It actually would go faster than that.
1,600 miles.
Yeah, about 1,600 knots actually, which is 1.1 miles an hour per knot. So it's fast. And sometimes you get
draw a lot of G's.
Yeah.
No wonder they got sick.
Burn a lot of gas, yeah. But when you get going that fast, the aircraft actually is one of the limits. It would heat up so much, the paint would actually start melting on